You've all seen the news by now, which was broke last night on our Patreon by this idiot. But I'm going to drop him in it a little bit here, because on his video earlier, Gonzo said he reckons there's an 80% chance West Ham sign Josh Brownhill. Well, last night he told me there was a 90% chance. I don't think anything's changed. If anything, there's more reasons to believe it, because apparently he's bought a gaff in Essex as well. But Gonzo's bottled it. He's given himself a little extra wiggle room there. So in private, he said 90%. So that's my news. My news is Gonzo says there's a 90% chance, despite what he said in the video. He's bottled it. He's backtracked a little bit, just not quite committing to the fact that we will sign him. But anyway, West Ham in advanced talks with Josh Brownhill. This is a difficult transfer for me to evaluate. At the moment, it feels underwhelming. And it feels a tad worrying. And there's two questions I need answered, which we cannot answer at this point. Question number one, what is his contract length if he was to sign for West Ham? Because 4 years, I'm not happy about that. But would Brownhill come to West Ham for anything less than 3? So my prediction would be it'd be a 3-year contract. And he's 29, 30 by the end of the year. I want to get away from those types of deals. I want to get away from those types of contracts. Now, I don't mind some older players, but that leads me on to question number two. Who is he replacing at West Ham? And I don't mean in terms of style or ability. I mean in terms of squad role. So we take sort of the bottom rung of the ladder, which is Andy Irving, which we've barely seen him. Well, he's not going to be replacing Andy Irving, is he? Because we've barely seen him. So is it Carlos Soler, which is, he'll start some games, but mainly he will be used off the bench. And if that was the case, fair enough. But we can't answer that yet. We don't know. Or is he replacing Thomas Souček? Is he replacing Edson Alvarez or James Ward-Prowse? Someone that actually we're going to see start most games. That's when I'd get concerned. So I'm not going to know how I feel about potentially signing Josh Brownhill overall. I can talk about him as a player, and I will do. But in terms of the transfer, it completely depends on who else we bring in. Are we going to bring in two other central midfielders, two younger central midfielders, whether it's Onyedika or the player being linked to from France today, players that we don't know, we're bringing in from abroad, but actually we're bringing in Brownhill as well, just so we've got someone who's got that experience of the Premier League, someone who's a little bit older, someone he was the captain at Burnley, who might bring the leadership. So we just bring him in for that role, whilst the other two signings get used to the Premier League. That would make sense, and I'd be okay with that. But my worry is that actually we only bring in one other central midfielder, that he's coming in to replace, say, Ward-Prowse, and someone else is coming in to replace Edson Alvarez, and that will be the midfield next season. That would concern me. So at this point, my feelings on signing Josh Brownhill aren't that strong one way or another. I need to see more from West Ham in the transfer market. Hopefully that makes sense. But I'm going to discuss the player anyway. Before I do, just a quick reminder, we've got nearly everything must go closing down sale on the Hammers Chat store. hammerschatstore.com, links in description and pinned comments. We will be adding more items to sale today, and we'll also be reducing the price of a couple of items as well. So have a little look. There might be something you like. There might be something you can get for a West Ham fan, whether it's for Father's Day, for a birthday, for Christmas. Buy it, keep it, come Christmas, hello. It's almost like a free gift to give to someone. But have a little look. There might be something you like, hammerschatstore.com. Right. Josh Brownhill, in terms of what I think of him as a player. Both of these things are true. Last season, 18 goals, 6 assists, one of the best midfielders in Championship, in Team of the Season in Championship. He had a wonderful season. He was a huge part of the success of Burnley getting promoted to the Premier League. A huge, huge part. This is also true. So far in his career, 111 Premier League games, 6 goals and 6 assists. Both of those things are true. My worry is we've just seen Josh Brownhill have the best season he's going to have in his career. He might not. I might end up being incorrect. I've just got a feeling. Because I think that is what Josh Brownhill is. A top Championship midfielder. A midfielder that's maybe too good for the Championship. He's guaranteed to be one of the best players in that division. So he deserves his crack at the Premier League. Well, he's had his crack at the Premier League. And he was, in my opinion, at best, a Premier League midfielder, an average Premier League midfielder. I think he struggled more often than not in the Premier League historically. Now you could say, well, that's because it was at Burnley, they were the poor team, the style didn't suit, and so on and so forth. then surely by that nature he'd be better off staying at Burnley under Scott Parker, who's got the best out of him in the Championship. And I think that's what Brownhill is, someone that's incredibly good in that division or struggles in this division. And he's in that group of players that I keep on discussing in videos that too good for Championship, not good enough for the Premier League. I think Josh Brownhill is in there. And that's why if he's coming in as a bit of a squad filler, squad role rotation type player, that's fine. But if we're going to rely on him, that's when I'm going to worry. But in terms of him as a player, and this is the thing, Parker's shown how to get the best out of him last season. 18 goals is outstanding, right? So you look at how they played last season in the Championship, a lot of possession, but the way that he played, he had sort of two different roles. Mainly he was used in central midfield next to Josh Cullen, but Cullen would sit, and Brownhill was the one that got forward a lot. Call him a box crashing midfielder or something if you like. Makes those runs from deep into the box. We don't really have a player like that. We've got Thomas Souček that gets in the box, but I think Souček is good once he's there. Most of Souček's goals come from already being inside the 18-yard box, so the crosses come in or whatever and he gets on the end of it. He's fantastic at that. But in terms of Souček making that darting run and the ball gets played through to him or the ball comes in wide and he finishes it, he's got a few in his locker, certainly, but not that much. He's usually in the box to become a danger. Brownhill was a danger by running into the box. Hopefully that makes sense. There was a lot of cutbacks for him and stuff like that, or crosses coming in, and he was getting on the end of loose balls or passes. That was his strength, and quite often, because he was running from deep in midfield, you'd find him running in between centre-backs, and Burnley were one of the best teams in the division. Burnley dominated possession in games. The Burnley wingers, whether it was Edwards or Anthony, they were capable of finding Josh Brownhill. Will he get the same opportunity in the Premier League? I'm not so sure. Will we allow him to play like that? I'm also not so sure. And the second role was he was a bit further forward. Burnley sometimes, more often than not, he was in a midfield two with Cullen, and he'd have Hannibal in number 10 behind whoever was up front, whether it be Fleming or Foster, even Ashley Barnes at times. But the other role, he'd often play that number 10 role. He'd be further forward when he'd bring in Josh Laurent to play next to Josh. A lot of Joshes, isn't there? Josh Laurent would come in to play alongside Josh Cullen to allow Josh Brownhill, team of Joshes, to play further forward. But weirdly, I think statistically, I think Brownhill was actually better going forward when playing deeper because of those runs he would make. So are we going to utilise that? We'll have to wait and see. And this is my concerns around Josh Brownhill, but certainly that was a style. Listen, a very energetic, hard-working midfielder. He's homegrown, which helps. I don't think we're under too much pressure, even though there's a few homegrown players going. A, we've still got plenty, and B, Potter said he doesn't want a big squad, and that's why my question too is a genuine concern of mine, because if you're talking about trimming the numbers and you want less players to work with next season, are you going to bring in two central midfielders plus Josh Brownhill? Because either that means there's a lot of players going, or we're going to have a big squad again. And Potter said he doesn't want that. So it makes me a little bit worried that Brownhill plus one other midfielder would come in. And this is just my opinion. This is just what I want at West Ham, which is a complete rebuild in the middle of the pitch. And it didn't involve bringing in Brownhill. That's my thoughts on him anyway. I mean, in terms of speed, he's certainly not fast. He's a bit like, I don't know, John McGinn pace is how I describe him. Energetic, makes good runs. He makes clever runs. Very good with the ball at his feet. I think he's comfortable with his left foot as well as his right foot. Some big goals for Burnley, especially against Sheffield United at Turf Moor at the end of the season. Huge game that was. I think Parker got it right to play Brownhill deeper next to Cullen. And Brownhill scored a couple of goals in that game. One was a penalty, the other one was just smashing it in from close range after Cullen had a shot saved. Huge player, big season. Burnley want to keep him. Parker was speaking about being quite confident that Brownhill would sign a new contract and CJ would sign a new contract as well, and he also hasn't signed one, so maybe there's a double swoop on for the two Burnley players. I don't know, because it feels like Egan's going to go somewhere else that's not Turf Moor. So in terms of this deal, I need to wait and see before I know how I feel. It feels underwhelming at present, but if we bring in 2 other central midfielders that are younger, it becomes a solid signing for me. I need to see more. My concern is, well, actually, I'm going to get statistical in a second. Before you go, this for legal reasons, this next part is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. At least we'd be weakening. Let me start that again. I've ruined my joke here, haven't I? At least we'd be weakening a relegation rival for next season. Right, if you don't like statistics, now's the time to go. Before you do, you know the score. Drop a like on the video by clicking the thumbs up button. Subscribing to Hamish Chat. But for those of you who do like statistics or you're nosy, my concern is that Brownhill would perhaps be blocking the pathway for, say, Freddie Potts. Now, obviously, last season, both played in Championship. So I went and had a little look at their numbers individually. I've got them side by side here. So Brownhill and Freddie Potts, this is both last season in the Championship. So you can see the top third, top half, if you like. Brownhill's dominating for goals, passes completed, passing accuracy, long pass accuracy, through balls, although there was only one more. So this is done by total. And if you were to do it by per 90, actually, Potts actually gets a little bit stronger, because as you can see, Brownhill's played more games than Potts. So if you did it per 90 through balls, they both got the same number there. So offensively, in possession, Brownhill is stronger for the passing side of it. But then if you drop down into duels contested now, we've got duels contested, we've got take-on success, aerial duel success, ground duel success. Potts is better than Brownhill in all 4 categories. Brownhill made more clearances than Freddie Potts. Then we get into the defensive side of it. Potts eclipses him. Interceptions, block shots, ball recoveries, possession lost. Obviously, you don't want to be leading on that. Potts lost the ball more times than Brownhill, but Brownhill was, so we say, more adventurous further up the pitch as well. So he's going to lose possession more times. I'm not too bothered about that. Times tackled, Potts was a lot less. So actually, statistically, Brownhill was stronger offensively, but Potts was stronger defensively, which makes sense given the roles. They weren't the same. They're not the same type of player. Potts was more of a defensive midfielder. Brownhill's more of a box-to-box offensive midfielder. But Potts is still a West Ham United player coming back for pre-season, and data-wise, they're not too far apart. Obviously, Brownhill's goals is the highlight. Of course it is. So that's my slight what happens to in question, and that is to Freddie Potts. And I'm not including Lewis Orford in the equation, because obviously I'm expecting him to go out on loan. But then we've got George Erty as well, so we're going to use Brownhill further up the pitch. Is he in the way of George Erty? We're going to lose him deeper in the pitch. Is he in the way of Freddie Potts, kind of thing? So it all depends on who else we bring in as to whether or not I'm happy about this. I think it's an okay start to the transfer window if we do get him. But like I said, my concern is he gets like a 3-4 year contract. It's quite a chunky one to hand out to someone, because he's going to be, if he's leaving Burnley, you have to feel like it's financially, because he wants Premier League football. He's got that. Just stay at Burnley. You're the captain. You've got a manager that knows you. You will play week in, week out at Burnley in the Premier League. Just stay there. Maybe he feels like Burnley's probably going to get relegated, and therefore going to a more established Premier League club is the better option. I'm not so sure. I'd imagine it's just a financial thing, and that's part of the reason. But anyway, I'm going to shut up and leave you. Josh Brownhill feels underwhelming, but depending on the other business we do this transfer window, I may grow to like it a little bit more. I'm off. Let me know what you think of Josh Brownhill in the comments below. I'll be back later on to catch up with you. And remember, if you fancy having a look at our closing down sale, go to hamishchatstore.com. I'll catch you in a bit.